The longest day Brielle Hayes pushed through the glass doors of Murphy's Diner, her feet screaming in protest after 14 straight hours on the linoleum floor. The November wind bit through her thin jacket as she pulled it tighter around her body. Her tips for the day sat heavy in her apron pocket, but she already knew it would not be enough. It never was. She counted the bills quickly under a street lamp. $83. Her father's dialysis treatment cost $240 3 times a week. The rent was due in 5 days. The electricity bill sat unopened on the kitchen counter, because she was afraid to see the final notice stamped across it. Brielle blinked back the burning sensation in her eyes. Crying would not fix anything. She had learned that lesson years ago when her mother left, unable to handle the pressure of medical debt and a failing marriage. Now it was just Brielle and her father, Robert, living in a cramped apartment on the south side of town. The bus to Union Station arrived late, as it always did. Brielle climbed aboard and collapsed into a seat near the back. Her reflection in the window looked tired. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes. Her blonde hair, usually tied in a neat ponytail, had come loose in messy strands around her face. She closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the rumble of the bus lull her into a brief escape from reality. An unexpected encounter. Union Station. It's buzzed with travelers even at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. Brielle walked through the main hall, planning to catch the subway home. That was when she saw him. An elderly man stood near the ticket counter, his silver hair slightly disheveled, wearing a coat that had seen better days. 2 enormous leather suitcases sat at his feet, and he was struggling to lift one of them. His face reddened with effort as he tried again, but the suitcase barely moved an inch. People rushed past him. A businessman in an expensive suit nearly knocked into the old man while texting on his phone. A group of college students laughed loudly, completely oblivious. A mother with 2 children hurried by, too focused on keeping her kids close to notice. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed down. Brielle felt something twist in her chest. She thought of her own father, struggling to walk to the bathroom some days, his body weakened by years of kidney disease. She imagined him somewhere, needing help. With everyone just walking past, her feet moved before her brain could talk her out of it, eh? Simple act. Brielle approached the old man and smiled gently. Her voice was soft but clear over the noise of the station. "Excuse me, sir. Can I help you with those bags?" The old man looked up, and Brielle noticed his eyes. They were sharp, intelligent, a striking blue-gray that seemed to see right through her. He studied her face for a long moment before responding. "Help me?" His voice carried a hint of surprise, as if the offer was unexpected. "You would do that?" "Of course," Brielle said. She bent down and gripped the handle of one suitcase. It was heavier than she expected, and her tired muscles protested, but she lifted it anyway. "Where are you headed?" "The taxi stand outside," he replied, watching her carefully. "But are you sure? These bags are quite heavy for someone who looks as exhausted as you do." Brielle let out a small laugh. "I've carried heavier things. Come on, let's get you to your cab before the next crowd comes through." The old man picked up the second suitcase, and together they made their way through the station. Brielle walked slowly, matching his pace. She noticed he had a slight limp, favoring his right leg. "Long day?" he asked as they navigated around a group of tourists studying a map. "Could say that," Brielle admitted. "Double shift at the diner downtown. My feet are definitely ready for this day to be over." "And yet you stopped to help a stranger." "My dad always taught me that kindness does not cost anything," Brielle said. "Besides, everyone needs help sometimes. I would hope someone would do the same for my father if he needed it." They stepped out into the cold night air. The taxi stand was just ahead, a line of yellow cabs waiting with their engines running. Brielle helped the old man load both suitcases into the trunk of the first taxi. The mysterious card. The old man turned to face her, and something in his expression had changed. The tired, helpless, elderly man seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who radiated quiet authority. "What is your name?" he asked Brielle. "Brielle Hayes." "Well, Brielle Hayes, I want to thank you." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small white business card. He held it out to her. "I would like you to come to this address tomorrow at 10 in the morning." Brielle took the card, confused. In the dim light of the street lamp, She could just make out an address printed in elegant script. No name, no phone number, just an address in the financial district downtown. "I don't understand," she said. "What is this for?" "Consider it an opportunity," the old man replied. His blue-gray eyes twinkled with something that might have been amusement. "I believe in rewarding genuine kindness, Miss Hayes. Come tomorrow, and you will understand." "But at 10 o'clock, he repeated firmly, but not unkindly. "Do not be late." Before Brielle could ask anything else, he climbed into the taxi. The door closed, and the cab pulled away from the curb. Disappearing into the flow of traffic, Brielle stood on the sidewalk, staring at the business card in her hand. The wind picked up and she shivered, suddenly very aware of how cold she was. Her practical side told her to throw the card away. It was probably nothing, maybe even something dangerous. But another part of her, the part that still believed good things could happen to people like her, told her to at least look up the address. The discovery on the subway ride home, Brielle pulled out her phone. Her hands shook slightly as she typed the address into the search bar. She told herself it was just from the cold, not from anticipation or hope. The results made her breath catch in her throat. The address belonged to Blackwood Tower, a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. The building housed Blackwood Enterprises, one of the largest real estate development companies in the country. The company's portfolio included properties worth billions of dollars. Brielle clicked on the company website. Her eyes widened as she read about the founder and current chairman, Theodore Blackwood. The photo showed a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his blue-gray eyes looking confidently at the camera, the same blue-gray eyes she had just looked into at Union Station. "Oh my God," Brielle whispered to herself. She read further, her heart pounding. Theodore Blackwood was worth an estimated $6 billion. He had built his empire from nothing, starting as a construction worker and eventually becoming one of the most successful real estate developers in the nation. He was known for his shrewd business sense and his intensely private personal life. The article mentioned that he had recently made headlines by announcing his semi-retirement, planning to hand over day-to-day operations to his grandson, Cameron Blackwood. But there were rumors of tension within the company. Whispers of board members unhappy with some of Theodore's recent decisions. Brielle's subway stop arrived, but she barely noticed. She stumbled off the train in a daze, her mind racing. Why would Theodore Blackwood, a billionaire, pretend to be a helpless old man at a train station? Why would he give her his address? What kind of opportunity could he possibly offer to a waitress who barely scraped by month to month? A glimmer of hope back in her tiny apartment, Brielle found her father asleep in his recliner, the television playing quietly. She covered him with a blanket and kissed his forehead. His skin felt papery and thin under her lips. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. In her small bedroom, Brielle sat on her bed and stared at the business card. She should be exhausted, ready to collapse, but her mind would not stop spinning. What if this was real? What if Theodore Blackwood actually wanted to help her? The rational part of her brain listed all the reasons this could be a scam, a trick, or worse. But another part of her, the part that had stopped to help a stranger despite being exhausted and broke, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the break she had been desperately praying for. Her father needed a kidney transplant. He had been on the waiting list for 2 years. Even if a kidney became available tomorrow, the surgery would cost a fortune. Money they did not have. Money she could not earn fast enough working at the diner. Brielle looked at the photo of her father on her nightstand. It was from years ago, before he got sick. He was smiling, his arm around her shoulders at her high school graduation. He looked strong and healthy and proud. She had to try. For him, even if it led to nothing, even if she walked into that building tomorrow and discovered it was all some cruel joke, she had to try. Brielle set her alarm for 7 in the morning. She would need time to find something appropriate to wear. Something that did not scream broke waitress desperate for help, as she finally drifted off to sleep. Her last thought was of Theodore Blackwood's eyes, studying her with an intensity that suggested he saw something in her that she did not see in herself. Tomorrow. Stepping into another world, Brielle stood outside Blackwood Tower at 9:45 in the morning, staring up at the gleaming glass and steel structure that seemed to pierce the clouds. She had chosen her only professional outfit, a simple black skirt, cream-colored blouse, and a blazer she had bought at a thrift store 2 years ago. Her shoes were old, but polished. She had pulled her blonde hair back into a neat bun and applied minimal makeup to hide the exhaustion that still clung to her features. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was like stepping into a different universe. Marble floors reflected the light from enormous crystal chandeliers. A massive fountain stood in the center, water cascading down smooth stone. Men and women in designer suits moved purposefully across the space, their shoes clicking against the polished floor. Everyone looked like they belonged here. Everyone except Brielle. She approached the security desk, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out the business card. A guard in a crisp uniform looked up at her with raised eyebrows. "I have an appointment," Brielle said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was told to come at 10 o'clock to this address." The guard took the card, studied it, then looked at her with new interest. He picked up a phone and spoke quietly for a moment. When he hung up, his entire demeanor had changed. "Miss Hayes, someone will be down to escort you immediately. Please have a seat in the waiting area." Brielle sat on a leather couch that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. She watched the people coming and going, wondering what she was doing here. This was insane. She should leave right now, go back to her real life, forget about mysterious billionaires and impossible opportunities. Brielle looked up to see a woman in her mid-40s approaching. She wore a tailored burgundy suit, her dark hair styled in an elegant bob. Her warm brown eyes crinkled slightly as she smiled. "I'm Nina Patel, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. He's been expecting you. Please follow me." The truth revealed the elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent, except for soft classical music playing overhead. Brielle's heart hammered in her chest. Nina stood calmly beside her, occasionally glancing at her phone but saying nothing. When the doors opened, Brielle stepped into what could only be described as a penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. The furniture was sleek and modern, all clean lines and expensive materials. Original artwork hung on the walls, and there, standing by the windows with his hands clasped behind his back, was Theodore Blackwood. But he looked nothing like the struggling old man from last night. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit, his silver hair impeccably styled. He radiated power and confidence, Miss Hayes, he said, turning to face her. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Brielle sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Theodore sat across from her, studying her with those sharp, blue-gray eyes. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "A few," Brielle managed. "Last night at the station, you were testing me, weren't you?" A small smile played at the corners of Theodore's mouth. "Very perceptive." "Yes, Miss Hayes. I was testing you. I have been conducting similar tests for the past 3 months." Theodore leaned back in his chair. "Because I have learned over 7 decades on this planet that genuine kindness is the rarest commodity in the world. Rarer than gold, rarer than diamonds, rarer even than honesty. People will help when cameras are watching or when there is something to gain. But true kindness, the kind that expects nothing in return, that comes from the heart even when you are exhausted and struggling yourself, that is precious beyond measure." Brielle felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I just did what anyone should do, but they don't," Theodore said firmly. "Last night alone, 47 people passed me. I counted. You were the only one who stopped. The only one who saw an elderly man in need and chose to help, despite having every reason to simply walk on by." "How did you know about my situation?" Brielle asked quietly. "After you left last night, I had Nina research you. I hope you will forgive the intrusion, but I needed to understand who you truly were." Theodore opened a folder on his desk. Brielle Ann Hayes, 28 years old. Mother left when you were 16. Father, Robert Hayes, former construction worker, now on disability with end-stage kidney disease. You work 60 to 70 hours per week at Murphy's Diner, sending every spare dollar to cover medical expenses. You have $38 in your savings account. Your rent is 6 days overdue. Brielle felt exposed, vulnerable. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. If you know all that, then you know I can't afford whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. Miss Hayes, I'm offering you something. Theodore closed the folder and looked directly at her. I want to offer you a position as my personal assistant. The salary is $200,000 per year, with full health benefits that would cover both you and your father, including transplant surgery should a kidney become available. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Brielle gripped the arms of her chair. $200,000? That was more than she made in 5 years at the diner. I don't understand, she whispered. Why me? I have no experience, no education beyond high school. I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about business or being an assistant to someone like you. Because you have something that cannot be taught, Theodore said. Integrity, compassion, the ability to see people as human beings rather than obstacles or opportunities. Those qualities are worth more than any MBA. The grandson arrives before Brielle could respond. The office door opened. A man strode in, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cameron Blackwood was tall, Lee over 6 feet, with dark hair and the same striking blue-gray eyes as his grandfather. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean build. He was handsome in a sharp, dangerous way, but it was his expression that made Brielle's stomach clench with anxiety. His face was set in hard lines, his jaw tight, his eyes cold as he looked at her. Grandfather, what is this? His voice was deep and controlled, but Brielle could hear the anger beneath the surface. Cameron, this is Brielle Hayes, Miss Hayes, my grandson. Cameron Blackwood. Cameron ignored Brielle completely, focusing on Theodore. Nina said you hired a new personal assistant without consulting me, without even interviewing other candidates. I don't need to consult you on my staffing decisions, Theodore replied calmly. You do when those decisions affect the entire company. Cameron finally turned his gaze to Brielle, and she felt pinned by the intensity of it. Let me guess. You did him some small favor, acted sweet and helpless, and now you think you've hit the jackpot. Cameron, that's enough, Theodore said sharply. But Cameron continued, taking a step closer to Brielle. How much did you research him before your chance encounter? How long have you been planning this? Brielle stood up, forcing herself to meet his hostile gaze. Her hands were shaking, but she kept her voice level. I didn't plan anything. I helped an elderly man with his luggage. That's all. Right, just a coincidence that the elderly man happened to be a billionaire. I didn't know who he was, Brielle said firmly. I didn't even know his name until I looked up the address on the card he gave me. Cameron's laugh was bitter. Do you really expect us to believe that? I expect you to believe the truth, Brielle shot back, surprising herself with her own boldness. Your grandfather asked me here. I came. If you have a problem with that, take it up with him, not me. Something flickered in Cameron's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or a grudging respect. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the same cold suspicion. Grandfather, can I speak with you privately? Cameron's tone made it clear this was not a request. Walls built from pain Theodore's side, but nodded. Miss Hayes, would you mind waiting in the conference room next door? Nina will show you. Nina appeared at Brielle's elbow, gently guiding her out of the office. As the door closed behind them, Brielle could hear raised voices. Though she could not make out the words, the conference room was smaller, but no less impressive. With a long table and more windows offering city views, Nina gestured for Brielle to sit. Don't take Cameron's reaction personally, Nina said softly. He has his reasons for being protective. He thinks I'm after his grandfather's money. He thinks everyone is after something, Nina corrected. 3 years ago, Cameron was engaged to a woman named Rebecca. Beautiful, charming, from a good family. He was completely in love with her. Brielle waited, sensing there was more. 2 weeks before the wedding, Cameron overheard her on the phone with her sister. She was laughing about how she had never loved him, how she just needed to get through a few years of marriage before the divorce would make her rich. Nina's expression was sad. He confronted her. She didn't even bother denying it, just shrugged and said it was business. That's horrible, Brielle breathed. It broke something in him, Nina continued. He was always serious, always focused on work, but after that, he became cold, closed off. He trusts no one except Theodore. And even that relationship is strained because Theodore keeps trying to force him to open up again, to trust people. The door to Theodore's office opened, and both men emerged. Cameron's face was like stone, but Theodore looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Miss Hayes," Theodore said, "I apologize for the interruption. Now, shall we discuss the specifics of your position?" Cameron moved to leave, but Theodore stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Cameron will be working closely with you. As you transition into your role, you'll be supporting both of us." Cameron's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His eyes met Brielle's, and she saw a challenge there. He was waiting for her to fail, expecting her to prove his suspicions correct. Brielle lifted her chin slightly. She had spent her entire life being underestimated, being told she would not amount to anything. She was used to people looking down on her because she was poor, because she had not gone to college, because she worked serving food to people who barely saw her as human, but she had never backed down from a challenge in her life. "I accept the position," she said clearly, looking directly at Cameron as she spoke, "and I promise you both that I will earn every dollar of my salary through hard work and dedication, not manipulation or deceit." I never doubted it for a moment. Cameron said nothing, but something in his expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The challenge in his eyes remained, but now there was something else there too. Curiosity. Perhaps as Nina began explaining the details of Brielle's start date and the paperwork she would need to complete. Brielle felt the weight of Cameron's gaze on her. She knew the coming weeks and months would be difficult. She knew he would be watching her, waiting for her to slip up to reveal herself as the fraud he believed. She was, but she also knew something he didn't. She had nothing to prove to anyone but herself, and that made her far more dangerous to his assumptions than he could possibly imagine. First, days and hard lessons. Brielle's first week at Blackwood Enterprises felt like trying to drink from a fire hose. Nina was patient and thorough, teaching her the complex scheduling system, introducing her to key employees, and explaining the intricate politics of the company. Theodore was kind and encouraging, often telling her she was doing well, even when she felt completely overwhelmed. Cameron was another story entirely. He watched her constantly, his expression unreadable. When she made mistakes, which happened often in those early days, he never raised his voice or lost his temper. Instead, he would simply look at her with those cold eyes and say something like, "Interesting choice. Is that how they taught you to prioritize at the diner?" His words stung more than any shouting would have. On Friday of her first week, Brielle arrived at the office to find a stack of files on her desk with a note in Cameron's precise handwriting. "These need to be organized and summarized by this afternoon. Should be simple enough even for someone with your background." Brielle stared at the stack, which had to contain at least 300 pages of dense financial documents and legal contracts. Her eyes burned with frustrated tears, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she made a fresh pot of coffee, rolled up her sleeves, got to work. She worked through lunch, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she created detailed summaries of each file. She organized them by date, by priority, by project. By the time Cameron returned to collect them at 4 o'clock, she had completed every single one. He took the folder from her without a word, flipped through the pages, and for the first time, she saw surprise cross his features. "This is actually good work," he said, sounding almost disappointed. "Thank you," Brielle replied evenly, though inside she wanted to scream at him. Cameron set the folder down and leaned against her desk, arms crossed. "Why are you really here, Brielle?" She met his gaze steadily. "To work, to help your grandfather. To earn a salary that will save my father's life. That's all. People don't help others without expecting something in return." "Some people don't," Brielle agreed. "But some people do. You just haven't met many of them." Something flickered across Cameron's face, too quick to identify. Then the mask was back. He walked away without another word. The board meeting crisis 2 weeks into her new position. Brielle attended her first board meeting. Theodore had asked her to take notes, explaining that he wanted a fresh perspective on the discussions. Cameron had objected, arguing that board meetings were confidential and not appropriate for someone so new to the company. "She works for me," Theodore had said firmly. "She attends." Now Braille sat in a chair against the wall of the massive boardroom, her laptop open, trying to be invisible as 12 powerful men and women discussed quarterly earnings and future projects. Cameron sat at the table next to his grandfather, his expression impassive as he listened to the presentations. Then Gerald Martinez spoke up. He was a board member in his late 50s, with slick-back gray hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. Brielle had learned from Nina that Gerald had been pushing for years to have more control over company decisions. Frustrated that Theodore still maintained majority control despite his semi-retirement. "Theodore, I think we need to address the elephant in the room," Gerald said, his voice smooth as silk. "Your recent decisions have been, quite frankly, concerning. This new charitable initiative, donating $20 million to build affordable housing, is fiscally irresponsible when we have shareholders to consider." Theodore's expression remained calm. "Blackwood Enterprises has always balanced profit with social responsibility. Has it?" Gerald leaned forward. "Or is this about something else?" "There are rumors, Theodore. Rumors that you're not as sharp as you used to be. That age is catching up with you. Some board members are wondering if it's time to consider a change in leadership." The room went silent. Cameron's hands clenched into fists on the table. "That's enough, Gerald," Cameron said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "Is it?" Gerald turned his attention to Cameron. "Or are you too close to the situation to see clearly? Perhaps you're enabling him, hoping to inherit control sooner rather than later." Brielle watched Theodore's face. He maintained his composure, but she saw the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched just a fraction. He was hurt by the accusations, and suddenly she understood. This was not just about business. This was personal. These people he had worked with for years were questioning his competence, his legacy. Without thinking, Brielle stood up. Every eye in the room turned to her. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice clear despite her racing heart. "But I've been reviewing the financial projections for the Affordable Housing Initiative, and I think there's something everyone should see." "And who are you?" Gerald asked dismissively. "Brielle Hayes, Mr. Blackwood's personal assistant." She walked to the front of the room, her laptop in hand. "May I use the screen?" Theodore nodded, curiosity in his eyes. Cameron looked tense, as if preparing for disaster. Brielle connected her laptop to the presentation system. Pulling up the spreadsheet she had been working on, she had not planned to present anything today. But last night she had been unable to sleep. So she had run projections based on Theodore's affordable housing project. "The charitable initiative costs $20 million up front," Brielle began, pointing to the numbers on the screen. "But look at the long-term projections. The affordable housing will be built in the Riverside District, an area currently experiencing economic decline. However, analysis of similar projects in other cities shows that affordable housing initiatives like this create economic ripple effects." She pulled up graphs showing data from 3 other cities. Within 5 years, property values in surrounding areas increase by an average of 32%. New businesses move in to serve the growing population. The city's tax base improves, leading to better infrastructure. And companies that invest in these initiatives see significant improvements in community relations, which translates to preferential treatment in future development bids. Brielle looked directly at Gerald. "In 10 years, Blackwood Enterprises stands to make back its initial investment 3 times over through increased property values and new development opportunities in the revitalized district. This isn't charity. It's a strategic investment that happens to help people." The room was silent. Theodore was smiling. Cameron stared at her with an expression she could not quite read. Gerald cleared his throat. "These projections are speculative at best, based on hard data from comparable projects," Brielle countered. "I can provide you with all the sources if you'd like to review them." Another board member, a woman named Patricia Wang, spoke up. "I'd like to see those sources. This actually makes a compelling case for the initiative." The meeting continued, but the tide had shifted. Gerald tried to raise other objections, but they fell flat. When the meeting finally ended, board members approached Theodore to discuss the affordable housing project in a new light, vulnerable. Moments as people filed out of the boardroom, Cameron approached Brielle. She braced herself for criticism, for him to tear apart her presentation or question her motives. Instead, he said quietly, "That was impressive. Where did you learn to do financial projections like that?" "YouTube and the public library," Brielle admitted. "I've been staying late every night, trying to learn everything I can about real estate development and finance. I knew I was behind everyone else here, so I figured I needed to work twice as hard to keep up." Something in Cameron's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Brielle said. "I told you I would earn my place here." "I meant it." Theodore joined them, placing a hand on Brielle's shoulder. "That was exceptional work, my dear. You saved me considerable headache today." "I just presented the facts," Brielle said, feeling suddenly shy under their combined attention. "Boy, you did more than that," Theodore said warmly. "You showed courage standing up in front of the board as a newcomer. You showed intelligence in your analysis. And you showed loyalty in defending a decision you believed in." He glanced at his grandson. "Cameron, I need to make some calls. Can you ensure Miss Hayes gets some lunch? She missed eating to prepare those projections, I'm sure." Before Cameron could object, Theodore was gone, leaving them alone in the boardroom. An awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Cameron spoke. "There's a decent cafe on the 20th floor. We could grab something." Brielle blinked in surprise. Was Cameron Blackwood actually suggesting they eat together? "Okay, sure." They rode the elevator in silence. The cafe was quiet at this hour, most people having already eaten. Cameron ordered a sandwich and coffee. Brielle ordered soup, very aware of how much cheaper it was than the other options. They sat at a table by the window. Brielle ate slowly, unsure what to say. Cameron seemed equally uncomfortable, checking his phone more often than necessary. "Thank you for defending your grandfather today," Cameron said finally, not looking at her. "Gerald has been gunning for control for years. Today could have gone very differently if you hadn't spoken up." "He was being cruel," Brielle said simply. "Your grandfather doesn't deserve that kind of disrespect." Cameron set down his phone and looked at her directly. "Why do you care?" "You barely know him." "I know enough," Brielle replied. "I know he's brilliant and kind. I know he gave me a chance when nobody else would. I know he believes in using wealth to help people, not just accumulate more wealth. That's rare." "Rare," Cameron repeated, his voice hollow. "Yes, it is." They finished their meal in silence. As they stood to leave, Cameron's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. "I need to take this," he said, stepping away. Brielle watched as his expression changed from surprise to shock to something like fear. When he ended the call, his hands were shaking. "Cameron? What's wrong?" "That was the hospital." His voice was barely a whisper. "My grandfather's former assistant, the one before Nina, she just passed away. Brain aneurysm. She was only 53. Brielle saw the carefully constructed walls crack. For just a moment, she saw past the cold exterior to the man underneath. A man who had lost his mother at a young age. A man who had been betrayed by someone he loved. A man who was terrified of losing anyone else. Without thinking, Brielle reached out and touched his arm gently. "I'm so sorry." Cameron looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. "Death doesn't care how rich you are," he said quietly. "No amount of money can stop it." "No," Brielle agreed softly. "But the time we have with people matters. The connections we make, the kindness we show, those things last beyond death." Cameron was quiet for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he placed his hand over hers briefly before pulling away. "I need to tell my grandfather. He'll want to make arrangements, of course. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." Cameron nodded and walked toward the elevators. But before he stepped inside, he turned back. "Brielle, you were right. In the boardroom? About everything." It was not an apology, not quite. But it was acknowledgement. It was the first crack in the ice. Emergency and truth that evening. Brielle worked late, helping coordinate arrangements for the memorial service. It was nearly 8 o'clock when her phone rang. Her father's number flashed on the screen. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Brielle," His voice was weak, breathless. "Something's wrong. I can't breathe right. I called an ambulance." Panic seized her chest. "I'm coming right now." "Which hospital?" "St. Catherine's. But honey, don't worry." The line went dead. Brielle grabbed her purse and ran for the elevators, her heart pounding. She barely registered Cameron stepping into the elevator with her until he spoke. "What happened? You look terrified." "My dad," she managed, pressing the button for the lobby repeatedly as if that would make the elevator move faster. "He can't breathe." "Ambulance took him to St. Catherine's." "I'll drive you," Cameron said immediately. "You don't have to. I'm driving you," he repeated firmly. "My car's faster than a taxi, and you're in no state to take the subway." 15 minutes later, Cameron's sleek black sports car pulled up to the emergency room entrance. Brielle jumped out before he had fully stopped, running through the automatic doors. The nurse at the desk was maddeningly calm as Brielle gasped out her father's name. "He's being evaluated now. You'll need to wait here. But I need to see him. He's alone. He's scared, miss. I understand, but you cannot go back until the doctors have stabilized him. Please have a seat." Brielle felt her knees go weak. Cameron was suddenly there, guiding her to a chair in the waiting room. She sat down heavily, her hands shaking. "He's all I have," she whispered. "If something happens to him—" "Don't think like that," Cameron said, sitting beside her. "He's getting care. They'll do everything they can." They sat in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes. Finally, a doctor approached, her face tired but kind. "Miss Hayes, your father has fluid buildup around his heart, a complication of his kidney disease. We've drained the fluid, and he's stable for now, but his condition is deteriorating rapidly. He needs a transplant soon, or—" She trailed off, but the implication was clear. "How soon?" Brielle asked, her voice breaking. "Weeks, perhaps a month, or 2 at most." "I'm sorry, the doctor left." Brielle sat frozen, the words echoing in her head. "Weeks, maybe a month." "I can see him now," the nurse called. Brielle stood on shaky legs. Cameron stood too. "Thank you for bringing me," she said. "You should go." "I know you have. I'll wait," Cameron interrupted. "Take your time with your father." "I'll be here." Brielle searched his face and saw sincerity there. Real concern. She nodded gratefully and followed the nurse. Her father looked small and frail in the hospital bed. Oxygen tubes in his nose, monitors beeping around him. But his eyes lit up when he saw her. "There's my girl," he said weakly. "Sorry to scare you, Dad." Brielle took his hand, fighting back tears. "You scared me to death." "The doctor says I don't have much time left if a kidney doesn't come through." Robert squeezed her hand gently. "Brielle, baby, I need you to promise me something." "Don't talk like that. Promise me," he insisted. "If my time comes, you'll be okay. You'll find happiness. You'll stop sacrificing everything for me and start living your own life." "I can't promise that," Brielle said, tears streaming down her face now. "You're my dad. You're everything to me." "And you're everything to me," Robert said. "Which is why I need to know you'll be okay. That new job you got? The one you were so excited about? That's good. That's real good. You're finally getting a chance, baby. Don't waste it taking care of a sick old man. You're not old. And taking care of you is never a waste." Brielle laid her head gently on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you so much." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky." They sat together in comfortable silence until a nurse came to tell Brielle that visiting hours were over. She kissed her father's forehead and promised to return first thing in the morning. When she returned to the waiting room, Cameron was still there, reading something on his phone. He looked up as she approached, taking in her red eyes and tear-stained cheeks. "How is he?" "Stable." For now, Brielle wiped at her eyes. "The doctor says he has weeks, maybe a month, without a transplant." Cameron stood. "Let's get you home." In the car, Brielle stared out the window at the passing lights, too exhausted to cry anymore. She was dimly aware of Cameron making a phone call, his voice low. "Nina, I need you to do something. Contact the National Kidney Registry. Patient name is Robert Hayes. I want him moved to the top of the transplant list. Yes, I know what that costs. I don't care. Do it tonight. Brielle turned to him, her eyes wide. Cameron, you can't. That's too much. It's done, he said firmly. Don't argue with me. Why? Brielle whispered. Why would you do this? Cameron was quiet for a long moment, his hands tight on the steering wheel. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with emotion. My mother died when I was 10. Breast cancer. We had all the money in the world, but it didn't matter. The cancer didn't care. But your father has a chance. A real chance. And I have the power to give him that chance. He glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. You were right about me, you know. What you said on the terrace that night, you thought I didn't hear you? What did I say? That I'm not a monster? That I'm just afraid. Cameron's jaw tightened. I am afraid. I'm terrified of trusting people, of being hurt again, of letting anyone close enough to matter. After Rebecca, after I found out she was only using me, I built walls so high I thought nothing could get through.